sport, not just football. You know, you're going to hear, but for football, it's under attack in the media and you know, just a lot of the things that you know, are coming out. And I'm not going to get into it because I don't know what I'm talking about. But I'll let them tell you. But football's under attack, and especially at youth and high school levels. Just some of the talk that's out there. You know, it's just really important to be knowledgeable and to be smart when it comes to you know, some of the things we're going to talk about tonight. So I'd like to pray, and then I'm going to have Andy Hauser coming up and make an introduction for us. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, I thank you for this evening, and I thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight, and for Kevin and his group that he's brought in here, Lord Jesus. I just thank you for their willingness to be here and to be part of Christian Life School and investing in the students that are here, Lord Jesus. And I just thank you for that. I just pray that tonight, again, as we hear all kinds of different things regarding our brains and just the things that are going on up there, Lord Jesus, I just pray that it makes sense. Lord, I just pray that we learn just a ton and that you're glorified, more importantly, in anything that we do here, Lord, that you're glorified in everything that's said and done. We just pray this in your name. Amen. Andy, if you come on up.
Sir. Thank you. All right. How's everybody doing? You guys, it's like we're in a morgue. You guys are quiet. Like this isn't like a symposium or anything like that. So my name's Andy Hauser. I am the 8th grade football coach. I coach with Jack Decker. I've got 3 boys that go to Christian Life School. Jack Hauser is in 8th grade. Gabe Hauser is in 6th grade, and Grant Hauser is in 3rd grade. He's over at Taekwondo right now, like Kung Fu and somebody somehow or another. And all 3 of my boys play football. I'm a college athlete. I actually played football for 4 years in college. And I don't know about you. Anybody in here athletes, like high school, college level? Like 4 of us? Right. What did they tell us to do? Rub some dirt on it and get back in. Right? And I think you're seeing some of the side effects of that today. You're seeing a lot of craziness out there. You're seeing athletes kind of go on a straight and narrow path, and all of a sudden they're deviating hard left, and things are happening. Whether it's violent abuse or it's violent aggression, whether it's you know, suicide rates, things are happening today because of what's called traumatic brain injuries. And traumatic brain injuries can happen not just in contact sports, but girls soccer, boys soccer, cheerleading is another big one, domestic abuse, car accidents. I mean, this isn't just a football thing that we're talking about tonight. Are we good? So what we're doing, though, is because football has this reputation of being a contact sport, that's why we're starting this program through CLS, through the football program, and through Kevin and Mary McWilliams with our football program. We'd love to expand it out to all sports at some point to get people not only tested, but to get them so they can become better. And we've got the honor and privilege tonight to hear from one of, like, I was telling Kevin one day, I've only known Joe for about 5 or 6 months, and I've only met him. We had dinner the one time. I said, there's very few people I've ever met in the world who have a true passion for what they do, and the passion does not involve the Benjamins, the dollar bills, the dollar signs. I mean, this man holds a number of patents on Alzheimer's research and all sorts of different research with the brains. He can make millions of dollars in the research world that he does, but that's not what he's about. He's about helping individual people fix their brains and their minds. I believe, Kevin, if I can say it, your motto is you got to worship the Lord with your heart, your mind, your body, and your soul. And what we're talking about tonight is getting our kids right long term and keeping them right so they can continue to worship the Lord with their minds. Because that's what's at risk when you play a contact sport or anything is the mind. And so I've got the privilege and honor of introducing Dr. Joe Clark. He comes to us from the University of Cincinnati. I'll give you just a couple of statistics. He's a neuroscientist. I did not know what that meant. I thought he was like with NASA or something at first. But he's a professor of neurology and a certified athletic trainer at the University of Cincinnati. He also oversees their concussion protocol, not just for football, but for all sports. And you're hearing from the best of the best. I went to an event down in were we in Orlando for the Carrick Brain Institute? He was their keynote speaker. The Carrick Brain Institute works with hundreds of top-notch athletes from Sidney Crosby to Kevin Pierce to Dale Earnhardt to these guys that are dealing with you know, concussion symptoms, and this is their go-to guy. This is the guy they reach to say, hey, can you come in and teach our guys what's going on? So you probably would not have access to this type of information if you weren't here tonight, and that's why we promoted it. We tried to tell every parent, every student, every teacher. We passed the word to our trainers. Like, some people are like, oh, you guys are just trying to make a buck. No. We're trying to save the brains of a lot of children long term, and I hope, here's what I'm going to ask you to do tonight. I'm going to ask you to promote the fool out of what this man talks about. Because in the Bible it says the spoken word never returns void. And this man's going to speak truth tonight in a secular, in a medical way that you need to get out to the rest of the world. That's your responsibility tonight. Is that fair? If you take what he speaks tonight and you just keep it and don't share it, then what we're doing tonight is worthless. What we're doing at CLS, Kevin's time investment and money investment, will be worthless. Is that fair? So whether it's a social media post, whether it's a neighbor, I had a guy come over to my house today. He bought a plow from me. His son plays Division II football. He's like, what do you do for a living? I said, I'm actually working with a buddy of mine. We're doing some concussion baseline tests. He's like, my kid just told me if I get jacked up again, I'm never playing football. He's a freshman. And I'm like, well, why don't you let's talk. I can put you in front of somebody who can help you. Does that make sense? So it's our responsibility tonight when we receive knowledge to pass the word. We good? So without further ado, I want to introduce Dr. Joe Clark.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Are we good? Yes, we are. Thanks for that. I really appreciate it. And thank you, Kevin and Mary, for allowing me to come up here. To start, let me introduce the support team, and that's Nicole and John. Please stand up. All right. So John Vincent is a former University of Cincinnati athlete, a football player who went through our program, and I am going to ask him some questions about his point of view for what we've been doing. And you guys can stay seated for now, but I'll get to you. And Nicole is an undergraduate neuroscience student who wants to go to medical school, who's been working with the University of Cincinnati athletes for 3 years. So there's different perspectives with regards to what we're trying to do for our athletes, right? And our athletes are our children, and that's our future. And as a neurology professor, I think the brain is kind of a valuable organ, and we want to protect it and encourage it and allow it to grow and educate. When I am working with an athlete, whether it's a high school athlete or a college athlete or a car accident victim who may or may not be an athlete, but as far as I'm concerned, if you have a body and you move around, you are doing athletic type things, motility. Your body needs to move, your brain controls that movement. Anytime I'm working with one of those people, I work under two premises. One is return to activity, so return to play in sports. The other is return to learn, because we're always learning, whether we're in high school or college, which is sort of my base patients, or just being able to do our daily living. And so I work very hard to make a person who is injured to get better. But what we do at the University of Cincinnati is sort of the broad spectrum. We work to prevent injuries. Okay, so let me give you a few numbers, and I don't want to do a whole college lecture. I am a college professor, so I can lecture. I'd rather get some dialogue and interaction, but let's start that dialogue and interaction with the numbers. So by the numbers, the average university in this country who has a football team has 10 concussions per season. Okay, so that's between 70 and 100 athletes. 110 athletes, that's about 10% of the athletes are going to get a concussion. University of Cincinnati, since we began this program of preventing concussions, neurovisual training and conditioning, 2.14 concussions per year. Okay, that's one of the lowest in the NCAA, sustained over 7 years. This is not a fluke, okay, this is by the numbers. So we're preventing concussions. What about other sports? Women's soccer. Women's soccer for the University of Cincinnati used to average 4 concussions per year. We initiated the same vision training program, slight tweaks because soccer is different than football, so we tailored it to the athlete's needs. The concussion rate went down 80%, went from 4 per year to 0.5. Okay, we used to average 1 medical disqualification in soccer per year. In 7 years, we've had 1. Okay? Now, a medical disqualification in college sports is fairly substantial because if you identify as an athlete and now you can't, the medical people are telling you you can't do that, that can be very devastating. So keeping people active and doing what they want to do becomes very important. Consistent with that, the average, still by the numbers, the average university statistic for how long somebody is out, not playing, possibly not in school, post-concussive event, 2 to 3 weeks. Okay, the average is like 9.8, but 2 to 3 weeks. The average for the University of Cincinnati, 6.5 days. Okay, so when we have a concussion, those people get better faster. And you're going to ask why. Okay, the reason why is very simple. Remember when Andy said I'm an athletic trainer, and I am a certified athletic trainer. My day job is definitely neurology, but I became an athletic trainer and stayed certified throughout my career because it overlaps with a lot of what I do, but it's not my main job. But the concepts are there. So in other words, anyone here who is in sports medicine or associated with athletics, you know that if you have an athlete who's conditioned and they blow out a knee, say a medial collateral ligament, you're going to tell them 2nd degree, 3rd degree tear, you're going to be out for 8 weeks or so. Okay, and you're probably going to be pretty close. If you have a couch potato who's never exercised, does not know how to condition or do cardio or lift, you're going to tell them 12 weeks. Because first you have to train them how to rehab and exercise, then you have to start the rehab. The brain exercises that we do for our athletes is the same we do for rehab. So they don't need to learn how to rehab the brain. They already know how to. So once they get injured, because it does occur, there's no zero limit here. Once it occurs, then we get them better faster because the brain already has a program on how to get better, how to do that work. Okay, last part of by the numbers. Every single university sport at the University of Cincinnati who has engaged in our neurovisual training, and remember it's brain training, every single sport who has done this has broken an academic record at least once in the past several years. University of Cincinnati athletics posts our grade point averages online. Okay, how many Division I colleges do you think do that? Okay, it's single digits. Nicole, did you have a vote on that? No? Okay, just checking. So not many. Our grade point averages are posted online every single semester. It's a culture. It's a culture that what we do for neurovisual training and conditioning reinforces the culture, and that is academics are important. Like I said, return to learn and return to play. This all takes a village. It takes myself, and I am sort of a point person at this stage, but it takes the student helpers, it takes the athletes, it takes the medical staff, it takes the academic staff who are supporting what we're trying to do, and we all work together to get the athletes safe to begin with, better when they're injured, and more academic prowess based on what we're trying to do. And I really don't want this to be a lecture, so do we have any questions or comments, or anyone want to drill down on some of that stuff?
What is visual training?
Sure. So neurovisual training. So vision training is what a lot of people do. And vision training is going to make your eyes and hands work faster. So you're good. That's okay. So vision training is improving the brain-eye axis so that the brain and the eyes will work better together. And that is a coaching position. So for example, the kind of hallmark of vision training is the vision coach for the US Air Force Academy, a guy by the name of Al Weil. And what does he do? He coaches, he trains the vision of pilots. Okay, that's pretty important. Their vision is very important. And we borrowed a little bit of what he did when we added it to our system in Cincinnati. But he only worked on the vision. So as a neurology person, I want the brain to work faster and better too. So one of the things that we also do is we do neurovisual training. So we make the brain process visual information faster. We make the brain remember things. So if there's a coach in here, have you ever had an athlete, you saw a play on the field, you go to the athlete and asked, what happened? I don't care if it's boxing or coaching, or football or soccer. You ask the athlete what happened, and they don't remember, they don't recall. The other guy had a really good play, or I really made a bad play, or something like that. They don't remember what happened, right? Show of hands, who's heard something like that in coaching? Anybody? Right? It's common. It's not like they weren't there. They were there. The athlete was there. They may need to go back and watch the film to figure out what happened. That's a processing issue. They were working on instinct, which is probably okay, but then they weren't processing the information. And if they're not processing the information, they're not going to learn by their mistakes. Right? That's back to the brain thing, learning and learn their mistakes. So yeah, they may make a mistake on that play, but then they're more likely to remember it and not do it again. You see what I mean? So neurovisual training is vision training plus the brain being more engaged in what the eyes are taking in. Make sense?
So how do you do neurovisual training?
Well, there's a long answer to that, okay? There are lots of things, and so, for example, speed of processing. There's what's called a chachistoscope. You flash an image on screen or show it on a piece of paper, take it away, and ask the person what they remember from that image. From a neuro perspective, I work left brain, right brain. So left brain is logic, like numbers. Right brain is more artistic, so a picture. So I will flash a picture on screen for our athletes, and they'll need to describe the picture. And it could be an athletic scene, that's fine. Sports play, sure. And some numbers. So they have to remember numbers and remember the scene. Okay, and these things are out there. But what does it also do? Have you ever been in a classroom and the professor's scrolling through slides and you don't remember the slides? Our athletes are more likely to remember the slides. Again, helping academics. There's a halo effect. Okay, so the brain is engaged there. Multitasking, okay? So Lori did some multitasking today. And if you don't mind, I'll describe what we had you do. So she was on our little Dynavision board hitting buttons. Okay, she did that fine. Then we had her hit buttons and call numbers. Dual task, hit buttons, call numbers. Then we had her hit buttons, call numbers, remember numbers, and add them. Add them in pairs. Okay, single digit addition, that's fine. Call numbers, add them, hit buttons. Remember the numbers. Then call numbers, add numbers, hit buttons, and call green buttons. There are red and green buttons. Now in neurology, that's frontal lobe. That's a certain area of the brain because it says yes, no. Green, call out. Red, don't call out. Okay? That's multitasking. All right, now for our athletes, we train that regularly to multitasking on a BOSU ball, okay? Where they have to do balance as well. So can you imagine that test? Trying to keep your balance, okay? But that's what we're doing because that's another brain task. And so, again, it's adding what's happening from the visual system and then other parts of the brain. So when I asked Lori to do that task, she had to do memory, one part of the brain, hippocampus. Eye-hand coordination, another part of the brain, occipital lobe, motor cortex. She had to do memory, executive function, mathematics, and frontal lobe. Okay, all sorts of different regions of the brain in 3 to 5 minutes of testing. Now, consider our athletes do 20 or 30 minutes of training regularly before the season to prevent the injuries, okay, or improve academics, or prevent concussions, or to learn how to rehab from concussions. So that's kind of what we're doing, right? And I want John Vincent to stand up and explain to us some of the stuff that he's experienced. Is this one live? Or that one? Okay. As a University of Cincinnati athlete. So John Vincent played football for the University of Cincinnati Division I college football for 4 years?
5 years.
5 years, sorry, beg your pardon. Redshirt freshman for 5 years, recently graduated and is now applying to medical school, but has now been on both sides of the vision training train?
Yeah, I guess so.
Go ahead.
So like Dr. Clark said, my background is in neurobiology. That's where I got my undergraduate degree in. And I played football at the Division I level at the University of Cincinnati for 5 years. And so Dr. Clark has been doing this vision training at UC for around 8 years now, maybe a little bit longer. And so like he said, I have a unique perspective because I have both the neuroscience background as well as being the athlete. So I've been put through this vision training for the last 5 years during my time as an athlete. And I'm gonna speak quite frankly and honestly, the thing about a Division I athlete is we have a lot of things going on. We have, in the fall for football specifically, we have practice from noon to 6 p.m. And we gotta figure out how we fit classes in there as well. And then we gotta figure out how we're gonna study. So we have a lot on our plates at all times, plus meetings and film review, and we gotta eat too, because we gotta keep our weight up. So giving us another task, in our mind, we see it as a task. But what we love is that the practicality of it is very easy to see. Is when we're, some of my best friends are the quarterbacks and O-line and, DBs and all of them. We're a brotherhood. And, we have training modules, essentially, vision training, specific to the type of athlete. So for QBs, for example, we'll have that big vision board that you saw out there, if you saw it, and we'll have them hold a ball, they're in the throwing arm, turned, and they will be hitting buttons with one hand, holding the ball, they'll be saying the numbers, and then they'll also have to quickly look at a flashcard that we have, like 3 times 3, or 6 times 4, or 3, the square root of 9, or something like that. Something that has to invoke a little bit more thought into it. But think of the practicality of that. What does a QB have to do? They have to be scanning the field. They have to be mindful of what's coming this way. They have to look at all their check down routes, but they have to protect themselves too. They gotta check their blind spot, because that's where a lot of injuries occur, especially for QBs. And we wanna keep it very symmetrical as well. So we also, even though they don't do their, if they're a right-handed thrower, they're not gonna throw with their left hand, but we wanna keep it symmetrical so we're, training both aspects of their brain. For O-linemen, for example, it's really easy. What do you want to, who wins as an O-lineman? O-line versus D-line, lower man wins, right? So we have neurovision training protocols for O-linemen too, where it's, it's only the lower half of the board. They kind of got to get in an athletic stance, hit the buttons, and we actually do one where it's, a red light will pop up, they got to hit it with their right hand. A green light will pop up, they got to hit it with their left hand. So they're constantly thinking about that. And then on top of that, they're doing some simple addition on the screen, or one of Dr. Clark's favorites is a 4-letter word pops up, but fill in the blank, so you make up one of your 4-letter words. And so it's a really, practical, and that as an athlete, we can see that translate over to the field. And that's what matters to us. If it's gonna make us better on the field and help keep us safer, that's what matters. Then we're gonna be involved. And especially at UC over my past 5 years, we have, I'd probably say we have an 80 to 85% out of 115, 20 guys, 180% of them are on board and engaged and doing it routinely when it's scheduled. And like Dr. Clark said, it does take a village. So the whole athletic training staff, the medical team, coaches are on board, and that's what it takes. The academic people are on board as well. And I think what was the GPA for the spring? I think it was a 3.1.
3.11.
Yeah, 3.11.
That was a record for football ever. That was the highest.
And for
that was the
Division
last
I?
team. that broke the record.
Yeah. I think we break it every semester.
Yes.
But yeah, you know, that's reassuring too as a parent, from a parent standpoint, on top of the safety of it to begin with, which is the most important thing. And so that's really, from my perspective, is we do see the value in it because we see how necessary it is. And it actually, sort of from a different perspective as well, it kind of helps us have faith in our staff. You know, the staff is looking out for us. And it's just reassuring because, you know, with the media that we're, especially social media with my generation, we are so subjected to all of the media that's been put out there. And it's just, with all the negativity surrounding sports right now, it's reassuring to have our medical team and our athletic trainers and coaches on board to help promote our safety. And so that's just reassuring. And that's really my perspective that I've had over the last 5 years.
Cool, thank you. Any questions for John?
Yeah.
How many concussions did you sustain in 5 years of college football?
Me personally? Oh, I never had a concussion. So I was one of the lucky few. But yeah, so it was, you know, I have plenty of friends, O-linemen and running backs who have had, well, I guess not for us, but in high school, at least for me, there were some, a ton of the time. But in college, you know, with the vision training we do, it is pretty rare. You know, like Dr. Clark said, 2.14 a season. I mean, that speaks for itself right there, and those are objective numbers. So yeah, does that answer your question? 0. I've had 0 concussions.
I don't know who to answer, but let me say first of all, thanks for coming, and maybe this will be directed at both of you. Could you explain to us what happens to the brain, like during the concussion when it receives the trauma? Like what happens? How does that lead to CTE, which is obviously the big thing that people are talking about now when it comes to that chronic injury? And then, what is it about the neurovisual training? What happens to the brain that helps to strengthen it, so to speak, or to prevent that, or to then cure it faster?
Sure. Yes, so there's a bunch of questions there, and let me repeat them for anyone who didn't hear. Last part was with regard to the neurovisual training, what happens to the brain that helps lead to this safety. The other is the mechanism of injury, the mechanism of trauma for sports-related concussive events. Now, obviously, I need to give a frame of reference there, and then I'll repeat your second question. The frame of reference there is, remember, I'm in neurology. I see people with severe traumatic brain injury, fractured skull, missing pieces of brain. That becomes obvious. The concussion ones become, they're called mild traumatic brain injury. A concussion is a mild traumatic brain injury, period. In my world, there's no such thing as a mild concussion, because then you're saying to me a mild traumatic brain injury, which is nonsensical. So there's 3 categories: mild traumatic brain injury, moderate traumatic brain injury, severe traumatic brain injury. With a mild traumatic brain injury, I'll answer the question right away with a metaphor, okay? And the metaphor is, it's practically dinner time, and I want people to all envision a nice, big, thick, juicy steak. Okay, are you hungry yet? Big, thick, juicy steak. Now, say it's a nice, big, thick, juicy steak. It has just the right amount of fat and gristle on the outside, not too much that it's gross, but you know, a little bit of marbling on the outside. Everybody still have that mental image? Now, anyone getting hungry? Now you're cutting through that steak, and the fat and gristle doesn't move the same as the meat, the protein. Everyone still have that mental image, right? Anyone not get that mental image? Anyone not crave steak right now? Right, that's your brain. Your brain is made up of fat called white matter and protein, steak, called gray matter. Now, when you're cutting through them, they move differently. When your brain sloshes up against the skull, the fat, white matter, and the protein, gray matter move differently. And that's called axonal shear. So the axons are part of the communication system, the superhighway, and they get damaged. The axons contain what's called tau protein, and tau can be liberated from the broken axons, and the theory on CTE is that protein liberated from the axons then clumps together to produce tau tangles and leads to CTE. The evidence on CTE is not great, okay? The press on CTE is, and I can address that later, but CTE is not proven by science, and I want to emphasize by science. Traumatic brain injury is bad, period. CTE is one sequela of a bigger gestalt, but there's been a lot of press on it. So, did that answer your 3 questions?
Yeah, well, just talk about how, like, what happens to the brain.
Sorry. Just talk about, like, what is it about the neurovisual training?
Oh, okay.
How does that, like, strengthen the networks, or how does that help them to make them recover? Because that's interesting to me.
Right, so the neurovisual training, we do neurovisual training with our athletes in 15 to 20 minute aliquots, okay? So 15 to 20 minutes is a very important time, because that's the amount of time when you're doing brain training that you are going to actually wire. It's all about wiring and what we're talking about. So if I train your brain to wire, it helps that it's the neurovisual pathway, but if I train your brain to wire for memory, math over here, or for eye-hand coordination, the light board, or for peripheral vision, as John was talking about, if I train the brain to wire and then it gets injured because the axonal shearing has cut the wiring, the rewiring is going to occur faster. Just like if I train your muscle to build, and then you get injured and muscles waste a little bit, you're going to build muscle faster because you've already been trained on how to do that. Okay, and that really is exactly how it occurs. It's building a program on how to do the task of the wiring. Okay, the other component is these things. Okay, so one of the things we battle in my world in college and in high school is this generation spends so much time on these, they're losing peripheral vision. Okay, that's documented. And what we're doing is we're undoing the damage of these things. So one of the recommended rules that we have with our athletes is no media like this for 2 hours before a game. Sometimes really hard to do. There's bus rides, there's downtime, there's rain delays, you know. But we try to not have them on these things for right before a game. Okay, so that's the 2-component part. All right, but good stuff, good questions. Kevin.
You know, for the video, we're going to have you use the microphone.
How are we doing on time? I was going to say, what do you think about the value of baselines and things like that?
Well, that's a double-edged sword. So baselines are helpful. A majority of the people I see, I don't have baselines. So I have to do an 1.5 to 2 hour neuro exam and try and assess where that person was beforehand. However, when I'm with one of my athletes, okay, I know them. I have a baseline. So instead of an hour, 1.5 hour baseline, I can make decisions in minutes because A, I know them, B, I have the baselines. So let me give another anecdote, okay? It's not a sport anecdote, but it's taking to an extreme where I work and live. So John's freshman year, there was a car accident. 4 people, 2 people died. One was a university athlete, one was a non-athlete, a friend of one of the people killed. 2 other athletes, so 3 University of Cincinnati football players in 1 car accident. 1 deceased, 1 with a severe traumatic brain injury. And remember I said earlier, I deal with that regularly, okay? It's a harsh part of my job, but I deal with it regularly. And then a 3rd athlete who was what we call an orthopedic injury. He was emotionally traumatized and actually left the team. And then the severe traumatic brain injured person, the accident occurred about 11:30 or so at night after an away game. They were driving back from the away game. Alcohol was not involved. Single car accident.
Test.
Sunday morning, there we go. Sunday morning, I meet the parents of the person who is injured, okay? So that's part of my job. I went into the neurosurgical intensive care unit. He's unconscious, near death. And, you know, I mean, mom's here. I talked to mom. And I said to mom, I'm the one who's going to work with your son. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to be me. I had great baselines on him. I knew his brain to the nth degree. I knew how fast he could react. I knew his peripheral vision. I knew his color vision. I knew his executive function. I knew how bad he was at math. Okay, you know, you can't be good at everything. I knew how much manual dexterity in his hands he had. And all I could tell her was I was going to use all I could to work with him. Went to the highest level of the university. They decided that he was going to be rehabbed in the training room. That's not the normal place for rehab. You're good. I'm wired. That's not the normal place for rehab. I saw him every single day for 11 months, 1 hour a day. The physical therapists and the athletic trainers saw him 3 or 4 additional hours every single day in the training room. Yeah, sure. Sorry. I think when I pulled my phone out, right? Yeah. Sorry. So he didn't finish the semester where he was injured. He actually went back to school the next semester. October was the injury. January, he went back to school. He graduated with a 3.0 grade point average. Okay? It took 11 months of rehab. He had regular rehab with us for several weeks, as I said, daily. And then when he went back to school, again, daily in the training room. Plus, he had 105 brothers supporting him. That was actually an important decision, too. So the reason why I go there is the baselines told me what I had to work with and where I needed to go. All right, so the baselines are extremely important when the bad things occur because it gives me more information. The more information I have, the better I can help that person get better. All right, so let's take that to the next step. So we have a concussion person. Who here is a mom? Moms, raise your hand. Okay, so you're right here. If your son is with me and has a concussion, I take my phone, give it to your son, and say, call your mom, and we're going to tell her what's going on. And then she has my number. And again, I take responsibility for what's going to happen next. There is a study by the military. The #1 predictor for a good outcome post-traumatic brain injury, and that includes all traumatic brain injuries, the #1 predictor, the perception they're being helped. So if your son thinks he's being helped by me or, you know, the team, the village, because it is a village, the more likely they are to get better. And, you know, I get thank you notes from moms and the phone calls and all that stuff. But there's an ownership. And I think that's where the baselines come in because I'm not, rarely anymore with my athletes do I meet somebody and the first time I meet them is when they have a concussion. Because I've been doing this so long, pretty much all the athletes know me, at least a nodding acquaintance. All right, but does that answer your question on baselines? Mary? Come in.
So how do we duplicate Joe Clark in other places? How do we replicate Joe Clark and his baselines in other places? Is there equipment? Is there protocols?
Right. A, don't do the impact test. The impact test sucks, okay? So that's a neurocognitive test that is not made for neurology. Neurology people know tests that are medical. So there is equipment, there are tests, there is a knowledge base. So we have a baseline package that we've published and put out there. And, you know, Kevin's company is working on that as well. That package exists. It takes time to do it, but when you do it, you have that information. When you do that baseline, you have that information that's medical information that other rehab specialists can use. So the way you replicate it is you build the village. You know, you need the coach to buy in. You need the athletic trainer to buy in. You need a neuro person to facilitate. Functional neurology, they're chiropractors, they're very good. Certain family practice physicians, there's a whole sports med and sports neuro emphasis that they can go through.
So you're saying we have the equipment here, we need to build the village?
The village, yes. Yeah, because if the coaches don't buy in or don't believe it, or if the athletic trainers don't buy in or don't believe it, it doesn't go anywhere. Okay? And even the head trainer, Bob Mangine, who John knows very well, took him 3 years to believe it. But after he believed it, he becomes the biggest advocate. Okay? The reason why he accepted it is because they had to ramp up the concussion program at the time, and I was the vessel to help facilitate that. All right, but questions are good. I really want questions. Yes, ma'am.
How long after a concussion can this type of training take place or be applied? Then how long is too late, and how important is that timing on it?
Yeah. Okay, so how soon and when is it too late, right? On average, I meet our athletes when it's one of my athletes, and I'm very possessive about that, the next day. I promise the university I will see them personally within 72 hours. Based on what they present to me, I can start within 48 hours, start actual rehab. And that's a whole program, and we've published it. You have to be cautious because too much can be a bad thing, okay? But the answer is 24 to 48 hours, you can start. When is it too late? We've had people 11 months, 18 months, 12 years post-concussive event show substantial improvement. Post-professional people like Dan Carcillo and some of the other people that went to the Carrick Institute that I presented at previously, they can see benefits years later. They may not get back to normal, but improvement is better than, we use the expression, you have an old you and you want to get there because you don't like the new you post-trauma. We'll get you as close to the old you as possible. And we can make improvements even years later. All right? Yes, ma'am. Yes, please.
Say it one more time.
Okay, our kids have gone through this screening. We've gotten a baseline. If an injury happens, what is going to happen for us in this community? Are we working on building that village? Like, what do we need to do?
Right. I think other people need to answer some of that. So again, the starting point is having the information. The information is power. So if an injury should occur, you have the initial information and you need parts of that village to use that information for next steps. How are you going to do that? I think we need to talk to the... Sorry.
Okay, do I got to stand up for this? I don't want to stand up. So we're pretty well connected in the Chicago area with what we call a medical control, if you will. So it's a group of doctors, and they're functional neurology guys, chiropractic guys, and they're the guys that are, you know, I don't want to say they're the best or whatever, because there's a lot of good people out there, but they do know what they're doing very well. They're also looking to expand up here in the Kenosha area. Their latest doctor brought into the group came out of Milwaukee. But because of my experience in eye care and neuro-ophthalmology, I know a lot of doctors throughout the country. I've been in this space of neurology and neuro-ophthalmology and optometry device, setting up clinics across the country for 30 years. If the technology that we use today on all the athletes are all FDA, what we call FDA 510K cleared devices. They're not like FDA approved like a Dr. Scholl's foot sole or whatever. These are devices that the readings can be read by doctors anywhere in the world. So that's the one advantage to having this type of a baseline. Because of my proximity to the school, I have kids here and stuff like that. I can make a referral to, say, Dr. Mike, Dr. George, or whatever. Somebody's willing to go out to Illinois or Spring Grove area. But I would have a pretty good idea who good neuro-ophthalmologists are here or ophthalmologists in the area, because I kind of know who the good ones are. That's all. That's a start. We're looking to get a medical control up in the Kenosha area. And unfortunately, Dr. Mike had some kind of emergency kind of situation, but Dr. Mike was going to be here tonight, but he's not here. So I can't really speak on his behalf, but he'd be able to fill in some of that stuff to say who's locally that could do this. Now there are ways to go about doing it, but the good news is we have good information that can be read by any good doctor for the most part. Mm-hmm. Does that help? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
So my son last year in September, suffered a concussion. What are some things that we can do to prevent? Is there anything that we can do to prevent that? Is there things that I should be looking for now that he is almost a year out from that?
Yeah, so first and foremost, return to play and return to learn. So he needs to be the old him, that's not a new him. And as long as he's back to that, that's step one. Step two is modeled after some of what we do at the University of Cincinnati. When a person has a concussion, we have a meeting, and the medical staff, and the meeting goes through several questions. One is, was the concussion caused by something that we can prevent again? Okay, ask yourself that question. The second is, are there things that we can prevent that from occurring again? So if it's a blindside hit, there are blindside ways to improve that. If it was, bad luck, it's tough to prevent bad luck. With regard to strengthening the brain, it's the 15 minutes of wiring certain things. That can be done in many ways with the neurovisual training that we were talking about, some of which can be done with Kevin's company, some of which you can search online. I'm not saying Lumosity or brain games, because online things are too close. So it needs to be games that are outside. So there are reaction trainers, asymmetric balls that bounce differently, where a person has to think and anticipate. The colored balls that light up, and they have to, respond based on how the ball lights up in flight. We actually have a couple of those over there, and we can show you after this if you wish. It comes down to identifying if there was a deficiency that needs to be fixed, and then the 15 minutes to 20 minutes about every other day for the wiring to set in. Okay, does that help? Thank you. Any other questions?
Both of my boys have done vision therapy. Is that close to what you're talking? I mean, some of it sounds very familiar.
Yes. So vision therapy is often used for things like, weak eye, strabismus, dyslexia, and it is based on that. But then the neurovisual training is making sure the brain is processing kind of to the highest level. So if your boys did, let's say that the saccadic eye charts, reading left and right, you're familiar with that? Okay, do you know that there are saccadic eye charts where they actually spell out words and they have to remember the words? Okay, so the brain has to engage. So not only you're saying A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you're saying B, L, A, C, K, W, H, I, T, E. What did you just spell? Okay, so brings in, it's the brain. So very similar, but then there's an overlay. Yes, ma'am. Any other questions? Yeah?
I just thought maybe you could cover some of the nutrition items you have that help recuperating from an injury.
Right. Well, the body is an organism, and it's an engine, and it needs fuel. And we need good, healthy fuels. Very good nutrition for the brain. Healthy fats are critical for the brain. Like I said, the brain is made out of white matter and gray matter. That white matter needs healthy fat to help it get better, perform better. There are several companies, there's Smartfish, there's Epic, there are several companies that have very good products that support brain and body health. And it's a matter of finding high quality foods and nutrition and nutritional supplements, as well as a very well-balanced diet. And when I say well-balanced diet, I don't say meat, fish, eggs, bread, fruit, vegetables. I think healthy protein, healthy complex carbs, not simple sugars, healthy fats, fat, carbohydrate, protein, and micronutrients. Okay, so I think a little bit differently when it comes to the nutrition. So I'm not going to say don't become a vegetarian, because there are a lot of healthy proteins in beans. And I'm not going to say everyone needs to eat meat, because there are some cured meats that aren't the best for you. Then there are other meats that are very healthy. Right, so does that answer your question? I don't want to get too specific into products. There are some very good products out there, though.
High level, if you get a CTE, what should you, if you do get a concussion, what are one or two things that you could take right away nutritionally to start to wrap around the brain? Accidents, omegas?
Well, yeah, so the omega-3s are obviously very good. The fish oils, so high-quality fish oils. Phosphatidylcholine is a critical one for the brain. It's important for myelination. There's cofactors, micronutrients called adenosine, which helps in synthesizing and the healing of the brain. There's the Smart Fish supplement, which has healthy fats and omega-3s, and it claims to have a better ratio of the types of omega-3s. So omega-3s is healthy unsaturated fatty acids, okay? And they're what's called the progesterone derivatives, the arachidonic acid derivatives, and those things actually are fatty acids that go into protein, into lipids and the myelin membranes, and they have very specific double bonds that the unsaturated part, and those double bonds are in the right place to be able to stack correctly and make the myelin, okay? If you don't understand it, it's just having the right building blocks. But chemically, there are very specific building blocks. Trans fats are not the right building blocks. Saturated fats aren't building blocks, they're precursors to building blocks. Sorry, it's biochemistry, all right? All right, but is that answering your question maybe at a chemical level?
Can you talk about how you know when someone is healed from a concussion? When their new self is back using the baseline tests?
Well, that's a clinical decision. So the test doesn't make the decision. The clinician makes the decision. So when the test numbers are back, that helps. When I'm interacting with a person that I knew in advance and they are behaving normally, their comportment is appropriate, that is another step. When they go back to play, I still bother them. How you doing? How's school? How's your studying? I ask about study endurance because I'm trying to check up and see if there's anything I missed. Because, okay, say I send somebody back and they're 95%. That can happen. I want to make sure that they continue to get back 96, 97, 98. So the clinical decision is made, maybe it's not 100%, but we follow up to make sure that person gets back to the 100%. All right, but it's a clinical decision. The University of Cincinnati, 3 people are involved in that decision. Myself, the team physician, and the athletic trainer. Any one person can veto and say no, that somebody's not ready. So it's a team, takes a village, decision that comes clinically. The tests help. Yes, sir. Are you talking about a sideline decision?
Using it as a device, I believe, thinking probably about the ready bag.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Maybe I could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, we have a device, but they haven't purchased it.
Yeah, but, all right, so Dr. Clark will be here to correct me because I'm not a scientist nor am I a physician. But we have a handheld device, and it's called ReadyVal, and it is an FDA-cleared device, and it's used for all kinds of retina exams. And it gets down to what we call measuring, say, the membrane potentials of the retina. So we know there's changes in the function of the retina. And things that happen, and we can spot them right away. We can spot changes. We don't know what those changes are, but we can spot changes. The other thing that that device can do right away is a pupil function. And, so if we have a baseline pupil function, and if we see something go different, we just can say something like just not right. I'm not a doctor, the device has just been being used probably for the last couple years. It is an FDA-cleared device. It is, I know there's a certified ophthalmic technician here, Marsha, and the device is heavily used for early detection of glaucoma, which is a brain disease, early detection of lots of other retinopathies, as well as optic neuropathies. And it's nice to have around. I think I'll just leave it at that, and I would let Dr. Clark maybe speak a little bit about it, but it might be premature to call it a quote-unquote concussion tool, because I don't call it a concussion tool.
All right, and let me follow up on that. So I'm on the sideline, University of Cincinnati football. I actually attend several of the high school games. Someone is presented to me, the eye in the sky, the trainer, whatever, they're presented to me. I have to make one of two decisions. On average, I have 7 minutes. That is not a diagnosis. That's a presumptive evaluation. If I want to pull somebody from play, they might actually only need to say 2 things to me in less than 30 seconds and they're done. Give me your helmet, you're not playing. You know, I got a big hit, I can't remember a thing, my neck is stiff as heck. They're not playing, right? You know, that's not a good thing. Whiplash, concussion, there's all sorts of things. They're done. I don't need to do an exam. But if I want to send them back, I need to prove an absence of suspicion. Okay? Medically, that term doesn't really exist. But that's what we're told we're supposed to do if we're making that decision. So I have a cadre of things that I use to prove an absence of suspicion. Sorry if I'm in your face, I apologize. So I want quantitative numbers, medical numbers that will prove if I put that person back, I had reason to have an absence of suspicion to put that person back safely. Okay? Again, numbers. If I'm talking to you and you sound good, okay, my medical expertise may or may not help. But if I'm talking to you and I say you got saccadic eye movement at this time, you got a balance with this % degrees turn, you've got this number right on a Q&A, you've got, you know, these medical numbers on the device, then I have an absence of suspicion that helps me take the decision to put that person back. Because someday somebody's going to get that second concussion, the first thing that's going to occur is you shouldn't send them back, right?
I can tell you one of the things that, you know, we're taking steps, but one of the steps we'd like to take is to have one of those ReadyVal here at our school in the trainer's bag on the sidelines of all sports, not just football.
Right, great. And
Athletic trainers' bags. Okay, we just recently did a installation of kind of like what you saw in the back there, and we installed it into University of Pikeville. It's in Pikeville, Kentucky. And there's a college of optometry there and a college of osteopathic medicine there. And they also have an athletic training group there. And what do they have, about 550 athletes they oversee there?
550 athletes, 4 full-time staff, yes.
Yeah, so what they did, one, they believed in what we're talking about as far as using these devices, and they're starting to teach their optometry students how to utilize this equipment in this way. And it's going into osteopathic medicine to teach students and medical students how to do things this way. Their athletic training department is teaching them how to do things this way. Now they purchased, that group purchased 8 of those handheld devices that we were speaking of. The trainers are keeping 3 to carry around for practice and plays, and obviously they travel and they got a bigger group to manage. And the balance of them went to osteopath and to the optometry college, because it's also used in clinical routine for early diabetic screening and all kinds of other kinds of stuff. So, and other types of diagnostics. So, anyway, that's all. So it's being used by pros, is what I'm getting at.
Right, and the ReadyVal is traveling with the University of Cincinnati as well. You know, so we use it as well. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
This may be a question just for us parents, just to file in the back of our heads, and you're probably qualified to answer this, but let's say our sons get home from a game, they took a hit, wasn't diagnosed there, wasn't a big deal. As parents, when they get home, what should we be looking for? What's the first symptoms when we say something's not right, we need to do something about this?
You basically said it. So I often have athletes referred to me from other high schools and a couple of other local smaller colleges, and the athletic trainers they will say, so-and-so is presenting JNR, just not right. If it's your child and something's wrong and you're noticing something wrong a short time after a game or a practice or whatever, and it's during the season and you suspect JNR and there might be a hit involved, then have them see somebody. Because it's not your job to determine, well, they're a little extra emotional today because they're injured their amygdala. Maybe they're emotional today because they had a breakup and they haven't gotten around to telling you because they don't want to talk about it. You know, you don't know. But if something's not right, then you can act on it because it's my job to determine, you know, amygdala, frontal lobe, vestibular system, which isn't involved with emotions. But, you know, that becomes my job. If something's not right, I'll figure it out if it's in the brain, and the people like me. You know, so you refer your athlete, your son or daughter, to a somewhat specialized person that can do the brain evaluation. Maybe the athletic trainer, they may know something happened as well.
One of the things that we've done on a very micro level at this point, and Kevin can attest to this, and we would be willing, again, we're never going to overstep parents. Parents are going to be the decision makers all the time. But if you get to a point where you have questions and you've gone to whomever, we'll refer you to Kevin, and he then will tell you where the doctors, the people that know their stuff, are in this area where you can take somebody and, you know, have them evaluated.
Any other questions? All right, sit down. I want to talk to an athlete that went through our baseline today. Who here went through our baseline today? Somebody raise your hand. Oh, okay, there you are. Jack, was it? Jack, okay. Hi, Jack, how are you? All right, you don't need to be embarrassed, but your dad volunteered you. He pointed. Okay, so remember when you were on the big light board? Okay, and I had you doing this one, right? Right hand, just one hand. So what position do you play in football?
I play a D end and
defensive end
tackle.
And offensive tackle. Nice. Okay. So let's say you're the defensive end and you got to be ready to move. All right. So right now I'm in right defensive end. Now the coach probably tells you, you watch your man. If you got a primary man responsibility, but you need to see peripheral right there. Good peripherals. He saw his dad set up to take a photo. That's good peripherals. I like that. All right. So anyway, we got to go back and check his left peripherals to see how good they are because he saw that from that distance. Anyway, I'm doing vision training with you, and I tell you, you set up this way in a sports-specific stance. You need to watch your man, but you need to react to the buttons over here, which is the snap of the ball. All right, so you're doing this, bam, right? You're in position, sports specific, ready to move, and then ballistic movement. And I'm telling you, this is going to make you faster than the snap of the ball, both offense and defense. You like that idea? Yeah. All right, say something so people hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah? Do you believe it? You went through part of the test. It was a test today, but I can actually modify it to make it more specific to what you do on the line of scrimmage. All right, will you believe that?
Yes.
Absolutely, right? I appreciate that. I'm not lying to him. What I'm doing is I'm trying to encourage him to engage in the testing and in the training. But in the back of my mind, I'm also doing the injury prevention. So this is the best of both worlds. So Mom, I'm making your son safer. Okay? Jack, you're going to be faster at the snap of the ball. And I'm telling the truth to both of you, because I really do believe it. We've got the scientifically published papers. Performance enhancement, okay? So last year, University of Cincinnati baseball team upgraded their vision training program, had 6 people go to the majors. That's a record. All right, 2012, they initiated the first year of vision training. Their batting average went up 34 points. Performance enhancement, right? Injury prevention. Coach, I've cut the number of, we've cut, takes a village, we've cut the number of games missed by 85% because of concussion. Saved the University of Cincinnati $300,000 a year. Okay, these are real numbers. Sun safer, faster snap of the ball, better performance, save money. Right? So, therefore, yeah, I need a conjunction. This has been going on for 8 years. This is sustained. It's not a one-off. We didn't fluke it up, okay? I think we really believe it. The other thing is, it doesn't take an MD or a PhD or a tremendous resource to do this, all right? This is where I'm going to ask Nicole to talk to us about some of the vision training that she's doing with the local high school. She's the me for a local high school in Cincinnati. Hi, Nicole. Sorry. Nicole hates public speaking, so please be nice. Come on, Nicole.
Okay, so essentially, I do. Do I have to stand?
Annie's going to take a picture.
Cool. I'll blame it on my back. I can't stand up. So we got baselines on an entire high school's football team, and throughout the year we vision train them, and Dr. Clark specifies what they do, so it can be tailored to them specifically, and we compare who has had vision training, who has not had vision training, and who gets injured more. So it's not just concussions, it's broken legs, sprained ankles, stuff like that. And, well, people with vision training have significantly less injuries at the college level and, well, high school level too, hopefully.
Right.
Off by 100th of a point.
All right, did everyone get that? So the message there is we want to transfer this to people like you. We're trying in the University of Cincinnati. Yes, it's easy locally. And then Nicole has learned what I do and is doing the same type of thing with one of the local high schools. So this is, I believe this is transferable and really want to transfer it. I think it was Andy that said earlier, we want to help brains. I literally describe my job as saving lives one brain cell at a time. Okay, because I believe that every brain cell is important and precious, and we want them to be healthy and functional. Any other questions? All right, now you can stand up.
Before you go, again,
Yes,
I would
sir.
just like to thank you so much.
Sure.
And one more thing. I heard through the grapevine that you turned 29 years old yesterday.
Yesterday, yes. Yeah.
29 years old. So happy birthday, Dr. Clark.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and for being here, coming all the way from Cincinnati, and,
Yes.
and just kind of introducing us to this and being part of this is fantastic.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, yeah.
And us. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, thank you guys so much. I know I could tell when you took the microphone you were terrified, but you did a great job. You did a great job. And so again, on the way out, I just want to say one more thing before Andy comes back up. Again, this is not cheap. We want to take steps. And so if any of you have been touched this evening and would like to give, again, come to the athletic office. We're going to make sure that you write your check out to the right place, and we'd be happy to pass that on so that we can keep moving in the right direction when it comes to everything that we've learned this evening. And so, again, one more big hand for Dr. Clark and his crew. If you haven't seen the setup of where they're testing, we can guide you over there on the way out. You can kind of see some of what they're doing. And then if you've never been in the giant rig that Kevin has, oh my goodness, it is very, very cool, very impressive. And so again, something to see, something to be part of. It's just awesome. Andy, come on up and close out the evening. And I think we're going to have Kevin come on up and close us with prayer when Andy's done.
Cool. Now, like I said when we started, we need your help to get the word out. Promote this, talk about this, say something about this to somebody. We're the only school at this level in this area that's doing anything like this. And for those of us that go to CLS, they didn't raise our tuition for this. This is an added value to our existing tuition program. So we got to spread the word and get this out, because we need to make this beyond just Christian Life's little bubble. But hey, if I'm a parent and I'm evaluating Prairie, Christian Life, St. Joe's, this is a decision maker type deal for me. If my kids are going to Central High School or staying at Christian Life next year, this is a decision maker type program for me, because you're not getting this at other schools. It's not available. So get the word out. Tell people that Christian Life is doing things, they're moving forward, that the Parental Advisory Committee is working hard to get more out there, that there's parents like Kevin and Mary that are investing not only their time, but their hard work, their life vision. This is not just something Kevin does, this is his life. You know what I mean? He said that to me multiple times. And this is his life calling and his life purpose. And so we need to get it out there, because if it helps us, it'll help a lot more. We good? You want to wrap it up? Are you good? You going to be all right?
Yeah, I would just say one of the things we're trying to do, you can wrap it up, but
Two guys from Chicago.
No, the other thing is that I think it's pretty special that we're able to bring this to, CLS is the first school in the country essentially to get the kind of quality and things that are happening here. And we know the results are there. The evidence is there. I think in many respects it can be one of many tools to elevate CLS in the community and take advantage of, some of the growth that's coming up here. Bringing in, recruiting other people, say from the Foxconn, future Foxconn family, for example. All right, you got a big thing going on up here, but if we're doing things differently and better than the other facilities around here, I'm talking more personal right now, it's going to catch on, but it can start here where, this place can become a place that's looked to, like the scientific proving ground. There was Josh Hagan referred to you as the University of Cincinnati as the scientific proving ground. Lots of stuff transpires there. It's pretty impressive. And in my mind, I would like to see that here, not that we're using your children as guinea pigs. It's that there's some big stuff that's happening there. You guys are getting the same treatment as the big guys. All right, so why don't you close us out before I get all crazy?
I'm actually going to invite somebody up. Dr. Jeff Bogazic is here tonight. And again, I've known Dr. Jeff for a little while, but I'll tell you, I'm just impressed that you're here tonight and just that you're invested in what we're doing tonight. And I would just like you to close this with prayer if you would. That'd be great.
Yeah, let me just once again give my appreciation and, to think about what's going on here as far as preventative measures for concussion protocols and things like that. How can we make our sports safer for our students? What can we do to do a better job of early diagnosis, knowing, and some of the neurological visual training that can help our students to get back. I think it's just wonderful. And like Andy said, there's nobody out there doing that in our area. And it can be, we don't want to talk about, it's a game changer because it's a PR move for our school. More importantly, it's incredibly beneficial for our student bodies, for our athletic programs. And so I really appreciate that. I appreciate Mr. Tennyson and Andy getting this all together, and Kevin. We've had some I would say pretty detailed discussions about all of this stuff, neuroscience, which is a big thing for me. So I enjoy that. So thanks for being here tonight. Thanks for considering the safety of your children and of our students, and for your interest in our presentation tonight. So let's have a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you so much. God, you've created our bodies, you have created our brains, Lord, and as we do the research and discover new ways to be safer, to heal, preventative measures for different injuries, we're grateful for the researchers that are doing that work and that are enabling us to utilize that research to make our athletics a better place, a safer place for our students. And so we pray, God, that you would help us to use wisely the information that we've learned here tonight, to put it into practice. and to make our school a better place for all of our families. So we're grateful for the presentation, and we thank you for being with us tonight. In Jesus' name, amen. Thanks again for coming, and Dr. Clark will be up here. If you have any questions for him, feel free.